Hey everyone, welcome back. What I figured I would do in this one is talk about the application process to Sydney University for the Doctor of Medicine. It's the one that I'm obviously focusing on the most. That's going to be my main goal in my applications next year. And I realize as well, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of crazy different rules for every single school around the country. So I figured that we could maybe turn this into a series where I'm going to be applying to pretty much every single school that I'm eligible for next year, although Sydney will be my main focus. So at the same time, I'm kind of learning a little bit about the process myself as I go through and research it. And so I figured that I would turn them into videos and share that with you as well to hopefully help you navigate all of the information that's out there and all of the kind of complicated processes that are given in the GMSAS guide and in other admissions guides and stuff like that as well. The first thing I will say is that I'm definitely not an expert on this stuff. I wouldn't consider myself an expert on anything, to be honest, but I'm researching this as I go. So if I miss something or something doesn't quite make sense, call it out in the comments and let me know. If you've got a question, feel free to ask me a question. I may not be the best person to ask though. I'd probably say if you've got a specific issue or specific question about the admissions process, then I'd probably contact the university or consult the admissions guide as well, which I'll link below. All of the stuff that I refer to, I will have in the links. So that will hopefully save you a little bit of time as well. I'm also going to go through all the other types of pathways. Some people have asked me about international pathways, which is not really something that I'm super tied into because obviously I'm a domestic applicant, but I've also gone through that as well, and we'll break down the differences and the requirements for international students as well. First one is just looking at the breakdown of the places. That kind of gives us a bit of context for the application process for Sydney. They have an intake of around about 300 people. This is all based on the 2022 intake, but I'll be talking about 2023, so some things may change, and if that's the case, I may end up doing an updated version of it. But based on the information we have available for the 2022 intake, which shouldn't vary too much for 2023, I would imagine, there was a rough intake of around about 300 places, and about 3/4 of those are domestic places, so about 225, 230, and the remaining 25% being international places. The website says 70, so we can assume 230 and 70 or something around that. They won't quote specific numbers. This is roughly what we're dealing with in terms of places. Of the domestic places, they're then broken down a little bit further. So you've got CSP places, and then you've also got BMP places. So CSP being Commonwealth supported places where it's subsidized and you can put it onto a HECS debt. BMP places are a subset of CSP places, and those are bonded medical places where you're also agreeing or contracting with the government to give a return of service, which I believe is 3 years, but I might double check that, over the course of the early stages of your career. It doesn't have to be done in one hit. You can kind of split it up piece by piece, and you would give a return of service in a rural or regional area where medical practitioners are needed around the country. From that, based on the places that you can then kind of filter into a particular clinical school stream. So they've got the Metro stream for their metropolitan clinical schools, and then there's also the Dubbo stream as well. But the Dubbo stream is only available to those who can demonstrate that they're actively looking for employment in regional or rural settings. And so there's only 24 places in the Dubbo stream. Those 24, they make up part of the CSP places. So I might just give like a bit of a breakdown. So there's 300 places, 225 or so go to domestic, 70-ish go to international. Of the 225, then you've got CSP and bonded. And then depending on whether or not it's CSP or bonded, you can then filter into a particular clinical school stream, 24 of them being Dubbo, the remainder being made up by the metropolitan clinical schools. The international places are full fee places, and those are only available to the metro clinical schools, all 70 of them. So the overall process, it seems like a pretty long process, but it really breaks down to just a few key stages, but there's lots of little bits and pieces within each of them. So if we break it down to the main kind of aspects, the first thing is you need to complete an eligible bachelor's degree or equivalent. We'll go into that in more detail. That's going to be demonstrated through your GPA and how it's calculated. The other one then is you need to obviously complete the GAMSAT and have, we'll say, the required performance in it, which we'll also break down. So those are your kind of academic scores that go into the application. Then what you'll do is in May, they opened the registration on the 3rd of May and it closed the 28th of May this year for the 2022 intake. So we should expect a similar timeline next year. You'll submit an online application direct to Sydney because they've removed themselves from GMSAS, which means that you don't apply through GEMSAS, you have to apply directly through Sydney University through their website. Then once you've put that in that you will provide your GPA and your GAMSAT results that are eligible. That will then return a result as to whether it's successful or not. Successful in getting a confirmation page, that goes a little bit further. So those that have met the criteria and the cutoffs for that intake year, which are going to vary year on year, will then be given a confirmation page to fill out where they confirm their details, and then from there offers are made beyond that. In the confirmation page, that's also where you choose your clinical setting as well, whether or not you'd like to go for the Dubbo stream or the Metro stream. And then from that, offers are made. And so if you've already completed your bachelor's degree, then it would be an unconditional offer. That's a firm offer that you can accept. Then if you're still completing the final year in the year that you receive the offer, then it's a conditional offer. And that is on the condition that you maintain your GPA above the thresholds effectively. It's pretty unlikely that there would be any change there, but if there were, they could take it away from you. You can still accept that offer though as a conditional offer to confirm your place, but then it will be dependent on your performance for the remainder of your degree. Beyond that, that's first round offers. Second round offers may come out later in the year. I'll talk a bit about more of that later, but that's a little bit more likely now that they've removed themselves from GEMSAS, and people might be accepting an offer at Sydney, but then rejecting it later to accept an offer that they might get at a GEMSAS school. So the first thing is working out like what is an eligible degree. The admissions guide says that it needs to be of a level 7 under the Australian tertiary education framework. It needs to be a level 7, which is a bachelor's degree, minimum of 3 years full-time equivalent. It can also be a bachelor's with an honours year, so that would be equivalent to a level 8 under that framework to qualify. And it needs to have been completed within 10 years of the 1st of January in the year in which you are planning to enter. So to make that a little bit simpler, because that is a very confusing wording, is start at the 1st of January in the year you want to go in, take 10 years off of it. If you completed your degree after that date, then it's eligible. If you completed it before, then it's no longer eligible. So for 2023, then it needs to have been completed after the 1st of January 2013 to be eligible for 2023 intake. Then if you've completed a degree overseas, then they need to see that it's equivalent to the domestic standards. So the degree that you've completed still follows all the rules. It still follows the 10-year rule, 3 years full-time equivalent and all those kind of things. It also needs to be listed in the National Skills, I can't remember what it is, National Office, the National Office of Overseas Skills Recognition Guide. They've got ridiculous names for all these things. Every other rule applies. It just also has to be listed there if it's not a domestically completed degree. And then the final thing is, in terms of assessing your performance in the degree, you need to be submitting your GPA from that degree. So for Sydney, they do things very differently. It's not an element of your application in terms of ranking. It's just used as a hurdle. So if you've completed a domestic degree, then you need to maintain a 5.0 minimum GPA if you're going for a non-rural place. If you're coming from a rural background, then that minimum cuts down to 4.5 instead. And if you're an international student, then it needs to be equivalent to a 5.0. If it's a US or Canadian degree, then it needs to be a minimum of a 2.7 on a 4-point scale. And if it's from, say, Singapore using the 5-point scale, then it needs to be a 3.3 or higher on the Singaporean scale. Otherwise, if the country in which the degree was completed uses the 7-point scale, then it still uses the 5.0 minimum. And then if you're in the UK, then a lower 2 class is equivalent as well. I don't know much about the UK system, so hopefully I've got that right. There we go. And that's how the GPAs can be used only as a hurdle, and that's it. In terms of the GPA calculation, this is one that people have a lot of questions about. So it's done via a quality assessment service called QAS, and they use the University Admissions Centre or UAC system of calculating GPAs. All sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo. Really, it's just an alternative way to GEMSAS. The important thing is a GPA calculated using GEMSAS standards or methods is not the same as UAC. It comes down to what particular honours classes relate or letter grades relate to a particular GPA value. So I'll put that up on the screen. I'll link down below as well a conversion chart so that you can do it yourself, but it still does the weighting as well on each of the years, but it'll be different to the way that GEMSAS does it. So you can do it yourself and you can use that conversion chart, and I'll put the formula in as well. Otherwise, realistically, when you actually do your admissions, you'll actually make an application directly to QAS. You'll submit all of your data and then they will actually calculate your UAC GPA for you. But if you want to know what it is, then you can do it on your own as well. And then once you've done that submission, unfortunately it costs, the fee is $132 you have to pay to have it done. It then returns a GPA report, and that GPA report goes into your Sydney application as proof that you've performed at a particular level in your undergraduate degree. Then the next criteria is GMAT results, which again is probably what most of you are here for, given this is mostly a GMAT related channel. The idea is that for a particular admission cycle, Sydney is still using the 2-year rule of eligibility, just as any GEMSAT school uses GAMSAT results. But the difference with this is you don't have to pick which one you want to use. In a GEMSAT school, you have to choose which sittings results you want to put into your application. With Sydney, you get to provide them with all the eligible results, and they will actually choose and use the set of results that work in your favor the best for their system. So that's a really good thing. It takes the choice out of it. You don't have to make a gamble or anything and think, well, I did better in section 3 here, but better in section 1 here. You just give them everything that's eligible. They'll choose the best one that works best for you. In terms of what is eligible, it's the same ruling. So if you're looking for 2023 intake, then you can use September of 2020, you can use March of 2021, you can use September of 2021, and you can also use March of 2022 as well. That would be for 2023 intake, i.e. applying in 2022. In terms of the requirements for your scores in GAMSAT, they require a minimum of 50 in all 3 sections as a hurdle requirement. Realistically, because of the cutoffs, anyone who was under 50 probably wouldn't have had an overall ranking strong enough to compete anyway. So, but it's there as a minimum. That is waived for Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander applicants. There's some exceptions to those rules. The other thing then is the scores. They don't use the standard weighted score from GAMSAT. They also don't use an unweighted score either. They use a ranking system. So I mentioned in a previous video about the 1.25 weighting. Thank you to the person who corrected me on that. It is based on ranking, supposedly. We're hearing that at least from University of Sydney students, is that they're not doing a weighting. It's just that there seems to be a mathematical correlation between the 1.25 weighting for sections 1 and 2 and these overall scores with those that actually got an offer. But the way that they seem to actually be doing it, and they say it in the admissions guide, is they will take each of your 3 separate scores in each section. They will then rank you against all the other applicants for that section. You'll then get a rank for each of your 3 sections in the GAMSAT, and then they will give you an overall rank based on each of those rankings. And so your overall rank is then going to use to create a pecking order, and then they will choose from the top down. If we gave an example of that, if we had, we've got Jack, Devinder, Emma, and Claire, and they're all going to be competing for a place. And let's say that there's only an intake of 2, but they have their particular GAMSAT scores. So we can see that they've all got, reasonably competitive scores overall, some really strong ones in there. But you can see like Claire, for example, she's only got a 60 in section 1, but has a much stronger section 3. Sounds a little bit like me. And then you've also got people like Jack, who didn't have as quite a competitive section 3 versus the cohort, still a very strong section 3, but had a much stronger section 1. So we've got to balance all this out. So if we rank them on their section 1 scores, we can see they actually rank in order. Jack would be first, Devinder gets 2nd place, Emma 3rd, and Claire 4th, and so on. In section 2, you can see that Devinder and Claire have tied for 2nd place. So realistically, I don't know how they would deal with this, but what would make most sense, given they're doing an average ranking, is they wouldn't give each Devinder and Claire a 2, because otherwise then that would severely penalize the person who's technically in 3rd, that would be Jack, by giving him a 4. So it would also over-reward Jack out of luck. So more than likely what they would do is they would say, well, Devinder and Claire are tied for who gets 2 and who gets 3. So we average those, give them each a rank of 2.5. That would be a fairer system. But again, I don't know if that's exactly how they do it, but that logically would make the most sense. So we get a ranked score there, and in section 3, we rank them again. And then if we total up their ranks, it's like a game of golf. The lower the rank, the stronger the result. And so we can rank them in ascending order. And we've got Claire has the lowest at 7.5, and Emma has 2nd lowest at 6. And unfortunately, Jack and Devinder miss out in this case. That is pretty much how things would go. Keep in mind that people are ranked in different lists based on the place that they're going for and what their background is. So rural applicants, because there's quotas for a number of rural applicants and students. There's a number of bonded places. There's a number of Dubbo stream places. There is also an allocation for Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander applicants that if you're in a particular subcategory, including international students as well, you're going to be ranked in a slightly different list. Not everyone is pulled together. So that way then it creates a fairer system. The bulk of you though will probably be in the same pool that I'll be in, and that is applying for non-rural metro position full-time. In that case, that would probably be the biggest pool of applicants there. The other thing is obviously you're submitting all of your eligible results and they'll choose the best one, but you're not allowed to have your best sections merged together. They have to all come from the same sitting. So the best overall set of scores from a sitting are going to be the ones that are going to be used. What we saw from this intake was that the competitiveness was very, very high, and it would probably be because they're not interviewing, they're not using GPA as a calculation, it's just a hurdle. You're getting people with much, much higher GMSAT scores applying to Sydney. And so this is pushing up what the cutoffs will be. They won't release what the cutoffs are. It'll be based on the competitiveness of the cohort that applies each year. But we can see that on average, people that got an offer were probably up there kind of 75 overall scores and that kind of thing. But it's hard to really follow that because one, you're being ranked on section scores, not an overall GMSAT score. The other thing is some people might be reporting their overall GMSAT result, which is weighted, whereas you'll notice in the way that the ranking works, they're unweighted, which means that actually gives a little bit more favor towards those that are section 1 and section 2 dependent, and it takes the weighting off of section 3 a little bit more as well. That's it. It's also a slightly fairer system in that it ranks people based on their application to Sydney, not their rank against everybody who sat GMSAT as well, which I think is actually quite a good system. It's a bit cutthroat, and it means that because their intake is very small now, that it does mean that very, very high scores are required to remain competitive. But in terms of adjusting for sample size and demand, that is actually quite a fair system. So for international students with GMSAT results, you can either use your GMSAT result if you do have eligible results in the same way, but you're also eligible to use an MCAT result as well. You can use that in lieu of a GMSAT result in your application, and that should still work as well. You'll also be, as I mentioned before, you'll be separately ranked because it's for a full fee place and it's for an international spot, which have a quota of roughly 70. So international applicants will be ranked against each other, not against domestic applicants. So then with the submission of applications, this should run in May again next year for the 2023 intake. So the first thing you'll do is you'll submit an online application. They only accept online applications, no paper ones or by phone or anything weird like that. In that, choose which stream you're looking to go into, and that would be Metro or Dubbo. You can tick both boxes as well, but if you tick Dubbo, then you have to also provide documentation and provide a statement or a personal statement that shows that you're dedicated to practicing in a rural setting in order to qualify for it. As well as that, if you're applying from a rural background or as a Torres Strait Islander or Indigenous Australian, then you also need to provide documentation as proof. Applicants who then meet the requirements, so the cutoffs that we don't really know what they're going to be, if you meet the GPA requirement, you meet the GMSAT requirement as well, and you've provided all the necessary documentation, then you'll be invited to fill out a confirmation page. So you should get notification at some point that you've qualified, but it's not yet a firm offer. It's just to say that you're now on the shortlist of eligible applicants based on your scores and your application, and you'll then confirm all of your personal details, you'll confirm your GPA, you'll confirm your GMSAT results are still all correct, and then it'll also ask you whether you would like to apply through for a CSP or a BMP place as well, or both. Keep in mind that BMP is a serious commitment. Some people are kind of freaked out by it, but I would say, like for me personally, I'm going to be ticking both of them. I did the same when I applied for Melbourne earlier this year, in that I originally thought I was only going to do CSP only, but then kind of realized, one, I don't think I would really care where I practice, and two, in terms of having to up and move to a regional town, it doesn't have to be 3 years or the entire thing as one slog. You can do it in 6-month intervals and stints, and you can return that service over a period of time. I think there's like a 6-year window or something that you can kind of spread it out over in most cases. And the program's pretty flexible and pretty sympathetic to people's circumstances, because you can't exactly just pick up and leave and leave your whole life behind for 3 years or something like that, or however long the return of service is in one hit. I think it's a pretty reasonable program, and it does a lot of good for rural health as well. And then finally, after the confirmation pages, then there's 2 different outcomes that can occur there. I guess maybe, I don't know 100% if you could just be entirely rejected. I think some people did get confirmation pages and then didn't hear anything, but maybe I've got that wrong. If you're successful, then you'll get a letter of offer, or you'll get a notification of a firm offer. And again, if you've completed your degree, then that would be an unconditional offer that you can accept, and that's a guaranteed place. If you get a conditional offer, it means that you've not yet completed your degree, and it's on the condition that you maintain your GPA above your threshold. And then at the end of the year, then it would become a firm offer at that point. You then want to accept it by the lapse date. There'll be a period of time, just like any course, you have to accept to agree to attend the course. If you miss that, then it'll lapse, and then your place may be given to someone in the second round offer. From what I know, again, is someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can accept it because it happens. I think offers came out in like July this year, so they come out super early, well before GEMSAS. You can accept the offer, and then later, if you get a GEMSAS offer, turn down the Sydney offer and switch at that point as well. So if you're looking at applying to both, don't worry about that, I don't think. And then if you're unsuccessful, then what you may get is a notification of waitlist, meaning that you're put on the waitlist and you would be kind of like next in line to receive an offer if there are any changes or people don't accept their firm offers. The other thing is only one offer is made. So if you get given an offer for, say, BMP, you cannot wait it out and hope for a CSP place. You'll only be given one offer. That will be the offer that you are given. So you need to accept it if you are serious about taking it. Again, if you're looking at GEMSAS, then you can accept and then turn it down later, and that place can go to someone else. I would say forget it, accept the offer. Second round offers are pretty likely because GEMSAS offers come out around early November or so a few months down the track. And so if you've been waitlisted, then it may be the case that a number of people who accepted their Sydney offers then get an offer at, say, Melbourne Uni or University of Queensland and that kind of thing. And then they go and they take that offer instead. Maybe it's because people, like myself, like I'm going to be traveling interstate for Sydney, and ideally, if I was able to stay in Melbourne, then I would stay in Melbourne for sure. But so there may be people that have other options, and they may be rejecting their Sydney offer in the end and freeing that spot up, and that may then become an offer for those waitlisted. And that's everything. So that's the entire process. Hopefully that's kind of broken things down a little bit more. I know I learned a lot from it. If you need to consult anything else, you can go to the admissions guide, the Sydney University admissions guide. They have a domestic applicants one and an international applicants one. They almost look exactly the same though. They have a lot of really good tools in there with like little flowcharts that work out whether or not your degree is eligible, whether or not you're within the 10-year window, if your GPA is eligible, blah, blah, blah. They have everything stipulated there. This hopefully just kind of broke it down and gave a quicker summation of everything. And it's exciting for me because realistically, I didn't do this research earlier this year because I was only able to apply to Melbourne at the time because of my work commitments. But this time it's kind of cool to be exploring all the different options as I go through, and it starts to make it feel a little bit more real that I may be looking to make a pretty big change in order to accommodate studying medicine, hopefully. Anyway, if you enjoyed this and if you found it really helpful, let me know, like the video, leave a comment below. And if you're following along and haven't subscribed, jump onto it because I try to post as frequently as possible. Most of it is GAMSAT stuff, but I know that people's attention might also be turning towards applications at the same time. And so hopefully this is a really helpful and valuable resource as well. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next one. Have a good rest of your Sunday.